The pregnancy test fell from Elena's trembling hands, clattering against the marble bathroom floor. Two pink lines stared back at her. Undeniable, life-changing, terrifying. She pressed her palm against her still flat stomach, her wedding ring catching the light. Except it wasn't her wedding ring anymore. Just yesterday, she'd signed the divorce papers that officially ended her 3-year marriage to Marcus Chen, the billionaire tech mogul who'd grown so distant she barely recognized him. And now this. A baby! Their baby! Growing inside her just as their marriage crumbled to dust. Elena Carter had never imagined her life would unravel this way. 3 years ago, she'd been a social worker making $40,000 a year, pouring her heart into helping families in crisis. Marcus had been different then, a driven entrepreneur. Yes, but one who still laughed at her terrible jokes and insisted on volunteering at the community center with her. Every Saturday, they'd met when his company sponsored a youth program she ran, and he'd fallen for the woman who cared more about changing lives than chasing wealth. But success had transformed him. As Chen Technologies exploded into a billion-dollar empire, Marcus disappeared into board meetings, international deals, and a world Elena couldn't recognize. Their conversations became transactional. Their home became a museum of expensive things that couldn't fill the emptiness between them. When he'd asked for the divorce 6 months ago, citing incompatible life paths, Elena had been heartbroken but not surprised. She'd already been grieving the man he used to be, now holding that positive test in the bathroom of her modest apartment. So different from the penthouse they'd shared, Elena made a decision. She wouldn't tell him. Marcus had made it clear he wanted a clean break, a fresh start. He was already dating someone new, a venture capitalist named Sienna, who understood his world in ways Elena never could. The tabloids loved them together. Power couple, they called them. What place did a baby have in that perfectly curated life? Besides, Elena knew how to survive. She'd been doing it her whole life. She'd raised this child alone with love, the way her single mother had raised her. She carefully wrapped the test in tissue paper and buried it deep in her trash, then tied up the bag and carried it to the dumpster outside. She never noticed the recycling slip from Marcus's assistant mixed in with her mail, or that his private investigator had been quietly monitoring the building as part of the routine security sweep Marcus maintained for all his former associates. 3 months passed. Elena's morning sickness became manageable. Her body changed in subtle ways, and she threw herself into her work with renewed purpose. She was creating the life she wanted for her child, one filled with meaning, community, and love, even if money would always be tight. She'd taken on extra shifts at the community center, started a support group for single mothers, and found joy in preparing for this new chapter. What Elena didn't know was that Marcus's world had been quietly fracturing. The relationship with Sienna had proved as hollow as everything else in his new life. His company's success felt meaningless. He'd been in therapy for 2 months, finally confronting what his relentless ambition had cost him. His therapist had asked him a simple question that haunted his sleepless nights. When was the last time you did something that mattered to someone other than your shareholders? The answer had shattered him. Elena. Everything that mattered had been Elena. He'd been planning to reach out, to see if there was any chance of rebuilding what they'd lost, when his head of security mentioned something odd during a routine briefing. The private investigator hired to ensure Elena's safety after the divorce. Marcus had insisted on it. One of his few remaining acts of care had noted a series of appointments at an OB/GYN clinic. Medical records were private, of course, but the pattern was unmistakable. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. He'd pulled up his calendar, counted backward, and realized the timing aligned perfectly with their last night together, a bittersweet evening, 3 months before the divorce was finalized, when they'd both been vulnerable and seeking comfort in the familiar. He'd driven to her apartment immediately, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. When Elena opened the door, her eyes widened with something between fear and defiance. She was wearing an oversized sweater, but he could see it now, the subtle changes, the protective way she held herself. "You weren't going to tell me?" It wasn't a question. Elena's chin lifted. "You wanted a clean break, Marcus. You have your empire, your perfect new life. This baby doesn't fit into that." "My perfect life?" He laughed bitterly. Elena, I've spent 3 months in therapy realizing I destroyed the only perfect thing I ever had. Us. What we built together. I lost myself and I lost you, and I've been trying to figure out how to find my way back. You can't just... I'm not asking to fix our marriage in one conversation. I know I don't deserve that, his voice cracked. But this baby is mine too, and I want to be here. Not because of obligation or some custody arrangement, but because I've finally remembered what matters. And it's not the company or the money or any of it. It's people. It's connection. It's waking up and knowing you made someone's life better. Elena's walls began to crack. You hurt me, Marcus. You became someone I didn't recognize. I know, and I'm not that person anymore, or I'm trying not to be. He took a cautious step closer. Last month, I restructured the entire company. I stepped back from CEO to chairman. I've donated 70% of my shares to a foundation focused on social programs, education, housing, community development. Programs like the ones you run. I hired someone who actually cares about that work to manage it, and I've been volunteering 3 days a week. Elena stared at him, tears forming. Why? Because you were right. You were always right about what mattered. I was just too arrogant and blind to see it until I'd lost everything worth having. He gestured to her apartment. I found your trash, Elena, in the dumpster. 3 months ago. The test was in there. Her hand flew to her mouth. You went through my trash? The security detail found it during a sweep. They thought it might be relevant. He ran his hand through his hair. I sat in my car for 2 hours with that test, realizing you were going to do this alone because I'd made you believe I didn't care about anything real anymore, and you were going to sacrifice everything to give our child the kind of love and values I'd forgotten existed. The tears spilled over. I didn't know how to tell you. You seemed so happy, so free of me. I've never been more miserable in my life. He dropped to his knees in front of her, looking up with raw vulnerability she hadn't seen in years. I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm not asking you to trust me right away. But please, Elena, let me prove that I've changed. Let me be part of this. Let me be the father this baby deserves and the partner you deserve. Even if it takes years, even if you never forgive me, please give me the chance to show up. Elena's hand found her stomach, protective and uncertain. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, honest, focused on what mattered. But could people really change? Could wealth and success corrupt someone so thoroughly and then release them? I have conditions, she said quietly. Anything. This isn't about your money. I don't want some massive support settlement that makes me dependent on you. I want to keep working, keep my independence. Agreed. You go to therapy. We go to therapy together. We do this right, slowly, with professional help. Already scheduled for next week. And if this doesn't work, if you slip back into that person you became, I walk away. And you let me, without lawyers or fights or making this ugly. Marcus stood, his eyes locked on hers. If I slip back into that person, I'll drive you away myself. Because that person doesn't deserve you or our child. But Elena, I promise you, I've spent 3 months rebuilding myself from the ground up. I've cut ties with people who encouraged my worst instincts. I've sold properties and companies and trimmed my life down to what actually matters. I wake up every day and ask myself your question. Did I make someone's life better today? And I won't stop asking that question for the rest of my life. She searched his face, looking for the lies, the performance, the manipulation. But all she saw was the man she'd married, scared, hopeful, and genuinely transformed by hitting rock bottom. Okay, she whispered. But we start slow. Marcus nodded, tears in his own eyes now. Slow is good. Slow is perfect. 6 months later, Elena stood in the newly renovated community center, funded by the Chin Foundation, but named after Elena's mother, watching. Marcus read stories to a group of children. Their daughter, Rose, slept peacefully in a carrier against Elena's chest. They weren't living together yet. They were taking it day by day, rebuilding trust through actions rather than words. But Marcus showed up every single day. He attended every appointment, took parenting classes, volunteered beside her, and slowly proved that his transformation was real. He'd discovered something profound in his journey back to humanity. Wealth wasn't the currency that mattered. Kindness was. Presence was. The willingness to show up imperfectly and honestly for the people you loved. As Rose stirred against her chest, Elena caught Marcus's eye across the room. He smiled, that genuine, warm smile she'd fallen in love with years ago, and mouthed, "I love you." For the first time in years, Elena believed him. And more importantly, she believed in the future they were building together, one small act of love at a time.